from APM, American Public Media.
Orange Park Mall announces Florida's back-to-school shopping July 29th through August 11th. For your back-to-school essentials, American Eagle Outfitters, Buckle, Rack Room Shoes, and more. More information on store hours at orangeparkmall.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a man who survived 244 days in a coma left an indelible legacy. We discussed Drew Cohn's remarkable life and recent death with his greatest champion, as well as the reporter who documented his recovery over the past 7 years. Then, as part of our ongoing primary election coverage, we sit down with Duval County School Board District 3 candidate Becky Nathanson. Plus, a vintage pop-up market surfaces in Springfield. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also...
News in Washington, I'm Crawford. Iran's supreme leader has led prayers today at the funeral of top Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. He was killed in a strike in Iran's capital this week. The strike is blamed on Israel. The Israeli government has not confirmed this. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi says Iran is vowing revenge for the assassination.
People are waiting to see how Iran reacts. The New York Times yesterday reported that Iran's supreme leader issued an order for Iran to strike Israel directly. But, even if Iran chooses not to retaliate directly, it may do so through its powerful proxy groups in the region, including Hezbollah in Lebanon.
NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi reporting. After spending almost 2 decades at Guantanamo Bay Prison, the alleged mastermind of the 9/11 terror attacks and 2 accomplices have entered into plea deals. NPR's Sasha Pfeiffer reports on the Pentagon settlement with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and his co-defendants.
The 3 men will plead guilty to conspiracy and murder charges in exchange for life sentences. By doing that, they avoid the risk of facing a death penalty trial. But the 9/11 case is mired in so much legal gridlock that it was unlikely a trial was ever going to happen. So the plea agreements are widely viewed as the only way to resolve the case. It's not yet known where the men will serve their sentences, but an American law currently prevents them from entering the U.S. for any reason, including to go to a supermax, so they could remain at Guantanamo until their deaths. Sasha Pfeiffer, NPR News.
Former President Donald Trump is falsely claiming that Vice President Harris has not always identified as a black person. He was interviewed yesterday at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in Chicago. Harris is of both black and Indian heritage and has long publicly identified as black. The vice president responded to Trump's false claims during a campaign event yesterday in Houston. NPR's Deepa Shivaram reports Harris says Trump's remarks reflect what his presidency was like.
Harris spoke to the Sigma Gamma Rho sorority at their convention in Houston.
It was the same old show. The divisiveness and the disrespect.
It's not the first time Harris has faced attacks from Trump about her identity. He's also peddled birtherism theories about Harris, questioning if she's eligible to be president based on her citizenship. She is. While in Houston, she will also attend the funeral of the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News, Houston.
Voters in Tennessee will hold their primary election today. They'll choose congressional and state candidates to run in the fall election. One congressman seeking re-election is Andy Ogles, who just filed new articles of impeachment against Vice President Harris. He is opposed by Republican Courtney Johnston, a city councilwoman from the greater Nashville area. You're listening to NPR News.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Michelle Corum. Jacksonville area native Ryan Murphy was surprisingly eliminated at the Paris Olympics in the semifinals of the 200-meter backstroke on Wednesday night. The 29-year-old Floridian was only 10th fastest out of 16 swimmers, leaving him a tenth of a second away from the top 8 finish that he needed to advance to the final. On Monday, he received a bronze medal in the men's 100-meter backstroke. There is a tropical wave traveling west-northwest, and the National Hurricane Center is giving it a medium chance of developing within the next 7 days. Meteorologist Irene Sands with the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network has this look ahead.
This system will continue to move north of the Caribbean for the next 3 days, so in the short term, this wave has no chance to develop. It is when it moves over the Bahamas that could start to gain more organization, and this means that for Florida, there's higher than normal rain and thunderstorm activity expected during the weekend. If this system receives a name, it will not be until late this weekend or early next week.
Sands says the busiest weeks of the season are just ahead, and we can expect the tropics to become more active. It's almost 80 degrees now in Jacksonville. We will get to the mid-90s for the afternoon. A heat index value in the triple digits, and a heat advisory is in effect from 11 until 8 p.m. today.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include JTV, Jewelry Television, offering a variety of jewelry designs, from colored gemstone looks to artisan jewelry and fashion jewelry. JTV can be found on local cable systems or at jtv.com.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, Drew Cohn was often called a miracle for surviving a horrific accident that nearly claimed his life. Over the past 7 years, he defied the odds and inspired hundreds. Following his sudden and tragic death last week, his mother joins us to remember a life and legacy that she says will continue to endure. Later in the program, we'll have a conversation with District 3 school board candidate Becky Nathanson. But first, after a 244-day coma, Drew Cohn began a slow journey of recovery with his mother next to him at every literal step of the way. Here to discuss his extraordinary story is Yolanda Osborne-Kohn, Drew's mother. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're also joined by Heather Crawford, investigative reporter and evening anchor for First Coast News, who has documented Cohn's recovery for the past 7 years. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you, Ann. It's an honor to be here with you both.
Yolanda, first, of course, our condolences for Drew, and thank you so much for being here today. Will you start, if you don't mind, by reminding us who Drew was and the life that he led before his accident?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Drew's mom, and I'm proud of that. You can never take that away. I know he's not here, but Drew was just, he was that kid. He just lit up the room. He loved life. He was all about sports and his faith, fast cars, and just hanging out with his friends.
Yeah. He was a football player. He was a real standout football player.
Yes.
At Oakleaf.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and he had, as you say, just an incredible smile.
Yes.
Magnetic. Yes. Shortly before his 23rd birthday, just about 7 years ago,
yes,
he was on his way to the gym and he got in an accident. Tell us about what happened.
So he was going to the gym to go work out with his friends, and he was kind of like, for what we were told, the pavement was a little bit wet from where his bike was traveling on University.
Motorcycle?
And he was struck, and the car that hit him, they said, turned around several times, and the witnesses said that he did several flips in the air and landed in a pool of blood. And there was a group of bikers who saw it, who thought it was their own. So they were all running towards the accident while calling 911. And when they got there, the 911 calls that came in, a lot of people were stating that the person was dead on the scene. But Casey and Ben stopped their vehicle and went to give him help. And she began talking in his ear
These are just two
saying
good Samaritans.
random people.
Mhm.
They're friends with us now to this day, but just talking in his ear, saying, breathe, breathe. Someone loves you. Just breathe. And she said he finally like took a kind of a weird gasp of air with some gurgling, and I'm sure that's because of his injuries, internal injuries. And then from that point on, we just dug in with our faith at that point.
The impact was so intense that his motorcycle helmet, he was wearing a helmet.
Flew off, and the right shoe flew off, and basically that motorcycle, if you look at the pictures, it just looks like a flattened jump rope. Yeah.
So his injuries were extensive. Remind us
Yes.
what the physical damage was.
So he had impaled lungs, uh like what we call it, the medical term is brachial plexus, but that's where the scapula and the C5 injury is so severe that the tendons that require the right arm and shoulder to work together, they're paralyzed. He also had a severed quad, a knee arthrotomy, several broken ribs, some hip issues where surgery had to do that with the coccyx, the tailbone, how our gait moves. So, including the TBI and a axonal injury, which they call like a severe baby shaking syndrome, where the gray matter and the white matter are kind of jelly, and
In the brain.
right. So, what was told to us is that he would have no quality of life, and I quote, he would never participate in the world as he knew it. And when that was said to me, I knew that, yeah, that's unacceptable. When that was said to me, that's why that quote sticks in my head. A doctor said that to me, and no angst against him because, but in my mind, God created science in the beginning, God. So it starts there for me. And it just made me dig in. It doesn't mean that I'm against, it just means that I need to go to the author and finisher of our faith, the creator, and I need to take that issue to him. He's the one that designed the human body.
And yet there are these markers that health professionals use when someone is in a coma, and they have, time stamps, essentially 3 days, 7 days, 28 days. When
Yes.
you start to get into that range of a coma, the hope for recovery is almost nil.
And it was told to us on that level, very, very stringent rules about what science says is viable or not. And when it's against, then the insurance and the social services and the quality of care that you would get for these services that are designed to help, you are not going to get those services at all. Drew was deemed a 3 on the glucose score, the GCS score, and what is considered viable is 4. But how our brain thinks, most people, where you are a thinking person with no degree level of um, being like mentally handicapped, it's a 15, and Drew was a 3, not viable.
Heather Crawford, remind us of how you first learned about Drew and why you got involved in Yolanda's story in the first place.
Well, initially, it was Casey who stopped. I believe it was Casey who stopped to just happen to be on that street that day and held Drew's hand and just was with him, who reached out to our TV station. And I believe at that time she was wanting to know how he was doing. We started looking into it. And as I got to know Yolanda and Drew, little did I know the impact that they would have on my life, just how deep their faith runs and what an inspiration is. When you look at Drew Kahn's story, it is the embodiment of hope, the embodiment of faith, and what Drew was able to do is truly miraculous. And so we got involved early on, just sharing his story and then seeing his plight, because he was in the hospital. In essence, everyone around him was thinking he's a vegetable. He's going to have no viability. And insurance stopped covering the treatment he needed and sent him home. And so he was lifeless in a coma and sent home. And Yolanda and her husband, David, had to figure out what to do. They had to learn how to take care of him. And he stayed in that coma for 244 days. And then one day, everything changed.
You were, in some ways, with your reporting, helping to draw attention to the fact that this was a case where the mother was fighting for care. She was fighting for someone to take him in and help rehabilitate him. And no one would, because they didn't believe he was capable of rehabilitation. So he's at home on a feeding tube, on all of these other tubes, and it's mom that's taking care of him.
Right. And she didn't have the accommodations. When he went home, there wasn't even a ramp. I mean, he wasn't able to walk. He wasn't able to talk. He was on tons of medicines, and she had to figure it out. And she did. And I just want to say, Yolanda is the example of the power of a praying mother. She prayed over him every single day, and she never wavered in her faith. She believed from day one that he was not a vegetable, that he would wake up, that he would go on to live life to the fullest. And you know what? She was right.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to the mother of Drew Kohn. Drew recently died, but his life and recovery from an earlier accident has been an inspiration to so many. And you can join our conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937, or you can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also reach out on social media. 244 days, Yolanda. And then what happened?
Well, I just want to touch what Heather said, because we were getting calls from other press. And one of the things that I prayed for was that I needed a journalist that would handle Drew's story with care and not entertainment. And one of the things that I asked Heather and the general manager when they asked about the story, I just wanted two things. Would they preserve his name? And that if there were any images or anything that we didn't like, could they blur, or could we, have a preview? They did that, but they kept the integrity of the story. I never felt like it had to be about ratings. I never felt like they were like smudging out my faith or telling me, well, you can't say that, or they weren't pushing an agenda like a stereotype, or this is just an athlete, or get over it. It wasn't that type of thing. So I just appreciate you all walking with me and not walking ahead of me, dictating the storyline. That's really important, because one of the things that I said to her was, Heather, I'm going to need you to tell this story and keep the integrity of the story, because when he wakes up, he has to tell his own story. And I just remember her looking at me, and they're just so aghast. I said, no, when he wakes up, he has to be able to carry the story. So I don't want it to be about all these other things. And for that, I'm so grateful, because I think that's why we're here. Drew told his story. He did. He told it. He woke up and he told it. And then he did it.
And it's so remarkable what he did. So remind us, after he first woke up, spoke to you, and what happened from there?
That day, I was actually showering him, and he was kind of, I was getting ready to put him in the Hoyer lift. I don't know what many of you all, if you know what that is, but we call it the Hoyer God at my house. So it's an apparatus that helps you lift someone to move them, transition them from the bed to another place, and then from there, wherever you need to take them. So I was about to move him, and I was on the opposite side of the bed, and I heard all this movement, and I clipped my right toe. It almost tore off because I was trying to get to him to see what. And the eyes were blinking, and the one eye was open, and the other eyeball was rolling around. So he's been asleep so long, he doesn't really have the ability for the body to operate like it normally would. And it opened up, and he was like, Mom, okay, I love you. And then he knocked back out for like another week or two. That's what I got. And I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, and I was trying, you can see my phone where I'm trying to get it. It's upside down. I'm trying to, because I knew no one would believe me. I knew it. I knew when he was at home, nobody would believe me that he's going to wake up. So that's why I intentionally began to document and to make little markers of progress.
But you recorded that when he said that. I mean, you can actually hear him say, I love you.
Yes. But I mean, I don't even now it gives me great joy, because there's something about mothers. We have a connection with our children. And that day when the accident happened, I asked Drew on his bedside, Drew, if you want to be here, you're going to have to let Mom know, because these people, they're not they just don't believe it. So I need you to let me know. And what I heard in the inside, like if you have a TV with snow on it, what I heard was, I want to fight. I said, you guys, he said he want to, and then I realized I heard it, and I got up like, he said he want to fight. And then I was like, they're looking at me like, what? And I was like, okay, yeah, okay, let me keep that to myself. So at that point, what people were saying to the situation and about it didn't deter me from what I knew, who my kid is and who God is. And I think science, we need science, but we need God. And because God invented science, which one is more important? Which one am I going to validate that's going to do what I need it to do? Because the doctor, you can't create a new heart. You can't create new lungs. You can't create a new leg. I mean, you can, but it's, you know what I'm saying? It's not tissues, sinews. So I need the doctors. And what I said to my team was, but I need you all to work with us. Don't walk ahead and make demands. Don't presume something that you didn't create. The Bible says that the body that they were made in the secret parts of the mother's womb, and it was knitted together. And so because you didn't make it and you didn't knit it together, then I don't know that you can challenge me.
I want to play a little bit from a story that you did, Heather, an interview with Mom, and then we hear a little bit of Drew. He used a voice assist machine when his voice was weak. But
Yes.
so we also hear from him in this clip.
I want them to take away a sense of hope, and I want them to feel that truly anything is possible.
Speaking through a special device when his voice is weak, Drew has this message to share.
My story represents never giving up hope. All things are possible when God is in it. I just would love to tell others to never give up.
Powerful. I mean, when you look, if you go back and if you just search Drew Kahn's name and you watch the stories about him, you'll see what he did in those 7 years after that accident. He had to learn how to do everything again. He had to learn how to eat again. He had to learn how to talk again. He had to learn how to walk again. And I remember being at Brooks Rehab interviewing him through that assisted audio device that one day. And I was like, Drew, is this freedom? Now you can communicate. And he types in the machine, no, because I'm in this stupid chair. He was in a wheelchair. He was funny and had a big personality. And he did not want to be in that wheelchair. And we have videos of him throwing the leg braces off, getting rid of the chair. I mean, because it wasn't just like he went from being in a coma to back to life, right? It took training and rehabbing day after day after day. Yolanda was there with him every step of the way. And each step he got more freedom. He crossed the finish line of a 1 mile walk at Brooks Rehab. And then he learned to go on a bike ride with Mom. And then he learned how to, we were there when he was indoor skydiving one day.
Even boxing. He was.
Yeah. I mean, he learned how to do so much. And the whole world, his story made international headlines. And the world watched and we're like, oh my gosh. And his story, he says it is hope. If you're struggling, if you have a cancer diagnosis, if you have some debilitating condition that they've said, hey, there is no hope for you, look at Drew Kahn, look at his story and look at what happened, because he walked, he talked, he thrived for 7 years. He gave us hope. And even though he's not here any longer, his story is continuing to resonate. His story is continuing to inspire and encourage and give hope to everyone who hears it.
And Mom, we should say, after all of this journey and this incredible accomplishment, Drew did pass last Friday.
Yes.
So what do we know about what happened?
We know that he was walking eastbound on Collins. It was quite early in the morning, around 5:30 a.m., and he was struck by a pickup truck. And basically what we were told is that the gentleman couldn't see him. He didn't have on reflective clothing. So right now it's still an open homicide investigation. So I can't really speak on it, but that's what we know now.
Do we know why he was where he was?
Yes, we do, but we can't really go into, it's an open investigation. So really what we want is just for people, to pray and to keep us lifted up. And, we're not a family. We're not a family that is looking for people to like blame or figure it out. We're going to let the system work, due process, let the law do what they need to do, and let our community and our village that we're so proud here in Clay and Duval and Baker and Nassau. I mean, it's just been really remarkable how people have been so willing to like help from all walks of life. And it's just, I don't know what to say. It's just, I mean, he was my kid, right? And I'm gonna miss him, and I love him. But it's different when people are coming out to you. You're Morgan's mom. Oh my God, our prayers. It's just kind of weird. I mean, the response. I was in Publix the day before yesterday. I actually had to leave because it was overwhelming. I started in the dairy section. A couple people stopped me. Oh my God, Miss Khan, we're praying for you. Blah blah blah. Then I got to the vegetable area, and then the meat area. I just left my basket because it wasn't that it was sad or that but I was really moved that people saw the story and the integrity of the story that I so hoped for 7 years ago is being reflective now. I wouldn't have never imagined that, but I'm just saying, like, all of these things, the stars have aligned. I mean, I don't know, but it's just so, it gives my heart great joy. It's sad that we're going to miss Drew because physically he's not here, but really he is here. His story speaks volumes, and it's a story of action. Drew didn't just stop because what happened to him, and him being struck on that Friday lets me know that it's not always what people do, but it's our response. I don't have to dwell on what was done to Drew, right? Or how it happened, or if it was an accident. I don't have to dwell on that. What I do know is that God allowed it to happen. And because he allowed it to happen, Drew's at rest no matter what. Drew's not lost. I know his address. I just need to do my part to get where he's at to see him again. So that gives me great joy. It gives me comfort.
And I have to say, when Yolanda called to tell me that Drew had been hit by a truck and passed away, she was at complete and total peace. Now, that does not mean she's not mourning, she's not grieving, she's not terribly missing her son, but she has this peace that can only be explained by faith. And it's hard to describe. We're all mourning and so sad he's not here, but she's at peace. And she told me, Heather, that day in the hospital with the first accident, I prayed that God would give me more time with my son, and he did. And Drew died 7 years and 1 week to the day after she prayed that. And he had 7 full years. And so she says, what a gift. This was 7 extra years I got with my son. And she's so thankful for that. And I think that's what stands out to me. I've interviewed a lot of people who've lost children and have gone through a lot. But just to have that peace, when you hear Yolanda talk, it's just this peace that transcends understanding. And that's what's remarkable to me.
And I guess we should just, for the sake of clarification, say that, what we do know, or at least what police have said about the accident, is that the man that hit Drew stopped. He was cooperative.
Yes.
And that they didn't have any indication, at least at that point, that there was speed or impairment that contributed. So just to be clear about that. So those 7 years were a gift, certainly. And his story, I think, will continue to inspire people. What, if anything, can people do at this point? I know that there is a GoFundMe for funeral expenses. And also, I'm sure that there's some lingering medical bills.
Yes.
Because of everything that he's been through.
Yes. So sure, we do need, if you want to go to GoFundMe, great. And also, the prayer aspect, because prayers go where money can't. Prayers go where the judge can't, where the court system, where the doctors can't. I'm living proof. Drew was able to get those 7 years because nobody wanted to do it. And I think Drew's accident teaches us that sometimes it just takes grit and us being willing, right? Drew was in a position in his life where me and my husband were empty nesters, and we were fairly young. I was 50, turning 50. And sometimes you have to make a decision if it's something that when the doctors are saying, no, this isn't viable. Sometimes we can be selfish and we don't want that part of our life. We don't want to take care of someone who's disabled on that level. We don't want to lose our retirement. We don't want to. So there are a lot of moving parts. And I had made up in my mind that the Bible says that a man who has children whose quiver is full is blessed. And I knew at that point that God gave me the gift. I was responsible for taking care of the gift and managing the gift when he could not. So that means on every level, I had to be his advocate. And that requires us sometimes to give up ourself, our independence, the things that we can do. And sometimes it requires more as a parent.
Just want to say we've got a couple messages on Facebook. Charsa says, this story gives me chills. Excuse me. Thank you, God. And then Melissa on Facebook says, God bless your family. So grateful for your advocacy and your child, and you're inspiring. So certainly, a powerful story. Heather, it's wonderful that you were able to tell his story over so many years.
It was just when you look at the whole scope of it, the 7 years, and from the beginning of that accident to today, it's just remarkable progress. And I was watching the stories as I was driving here today. I was listening to them, and I just sit back and say, wow. I mean, look at what Yolanda and Drew did through their faith. Just truly remarkable. And it should encourage everyone and give everyone hope.
Well, we do have a link to one of those stories, an Emmy award-winning story that you did, Heather. We also have a link to the GoFundMe page on the First Coast Connect website. Yolanda Osborne-Kohn, Heather Crawford, thank you both so much for being here today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Up next, an interview with Duval County School Board District 3 candidate Becky Nathanson. Welcome back. The August 30th primary is just a month away now, and most Duval County School Board races will be decided at that point. Today, our election coverage continues. We welcome Becky Nathanson, candidate for School Board District 3. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. So there are so many issues to grapple with on the school board. There is money, there's safety, there's the long-term viability of public schools, and then also what some might call social and cultural issues. Which of those is most important to you?
I'm running for three big reasons. I think it's hard to rank which are the most important, but the literacy rate in Duval County has got to be addressed. So I'm most concerned with academic achievement and setting our children who attend public school on a path to prosperity. Right now, about half of the students at every grade level in Duval County are not reading at grade level proficiency. So we've got to be laser focused on that. Of course, I think the top three priorities are all interconnected. So my other two would be financial management and fiscal responsibility. The school district has $2.7 billion, larger than the city budget. We have money. When I'm knocking doors, talking to taxpayers, they voted for tax increases, and they're asking, where's the return on the investment? So where's the money going? Why can't we be focused on providing what the teachers need to get the instruction delivered so that our students are reading at grade level? And then the third priority is the climate and culture in our schools and accountability related to student behavior and even teacher behavior. We want to know that we're sending our children into safe, secure environments where learning is the focus. And when I talk to teachers, they would like to see that they're supported in that regard, and they can focus on instruction if the administration, if the school district backs them up in handling safety and discipline issues.
I know that one point that you've raised is how Duval County spends its money compared to other large urban school districts in the state. and looking at the fact that Duval County seems to spend a great deal more on things like transportation and food service versus instruction. And that does seem to be an issue that you're looking to get some answers to. I mean, obviously, we're a big county, so transportation, you can kind of see that being a cost. But in terms of student funding, Florida does lag. It's some $9,000 per pupil funding, behind places like Alabama and Louisiana. Do you see any problem with the fact that Florida's per pupil funding is so much lower than much of the country?
I think the larger concern is what we're doing with the dollars. The fund, it's not a funding issue, it's an allocation issue. And I think Florida has been a leader in the funding following students. So as we attract and retain teachers and as we attract and retain students in the system, there will be more funding following those students and going into our schools.
Got a call from Debbie in Mandarin. Good morning, Debbie. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Every month, IBEW Representative Frank DeLong speaks at the monthly school board meetings. And every month, Frank brings multiple examples of wasteful spending and subpar work by contractors that cost the district unnecessary additional money. How can you rein in abusive contract costs and remedy per subpar contractor costs? One example of out-of-control spending is $36,000 on Minecraft lighting for one classroom at one school.
Good question, Debbie. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I have some thoughts about that. Thank you for the call. I don't know if it's always an issue of whether a service is contracted out or whether it's in-house. It's a matter of managing and holding people accountable to the deliverables that they are responsible for delivering. So as a school board member, if I'm asked to vote on a contract, those above $75,000, I would vet that. I would review it carefully and not just rubber stamp everything that comes before the board. But I do think we can do better with accountability and making sure that our dollars are being spent wisely, whether they're contracted out or whether we're paying our own staff to do those things.
We have a call from Melissa in San Marco. Good morning, Melissa. Go ahead.
Good morning. I saw a flyer from your campaign, Becky, with endorsements from a list of elected officials and pastors, and I'm just wondering why they're all supporting you and not your opponent.
Well, I can tell you that after 4 years, my incumbent has been in office, and the voters of District 3, the conservative voters of District 3 who put her in office have watched her govern. And all I can say is that I'm willing to stand up, vote my conscience, and stand for the values that I believe in. And a growing list of individuals and groups continue to endorse me, and I'm grateful for that.
We should say your endorsements include the Fraternal Order of Police, the governor.
Governor DeSantis.
I wanted to just mention your opponent was on the program. We'll have a link to her interview if people want to check that out. That will be on the First Coast Connect website with this story. We have a call from Yasmina in Arlington. Good morning, Yasmina. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. This is in regard to a tweet on July 1st, 2023. You gloated about being a proud member of Moms for Liberty, and I quote, how you and your group are beautiful and joyful domestic terrorists. How does this mentality undermine the very people in this country that you will be elected to serve?
Thanks, Yasmina. Becky, you are one of the founding members, I believe, of the Duval chapter of Moms for Liberty.
I'm proud of standing up for parental rights. I'm not clear on what tweet she's referring to. I'm not a domestic terrorist. I can tell you that parents across the nation, including here in Duval County, when we got involved and started speaking up on behalf of parental rights, when we started reviewing school board policy and packets, we've been called extremists, radicals, domestic terrorists. We're nothing of the sort, but I can't address a tweet that I'm not looking at.
Moms for Liberty has been designated an extremist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Do you think that is...
The Southern Poverty Law Center basically identifies any group more conservative than they are as extreme or as a hate group. They've been discredited. They've had to lay off over 60 employees. I don't need to respond to the Southern Poverty Law Center.
I think a large part of their concern is language about LGBTQ community, and a lot of language that tends to label people that, support or advocate for that community as groomers. Just
I have never done that.
Mhm.
My chapter has never done that. So I'm not going to respond to something that's a false allegation.
I don't think that's a false allegation.
I have never referred to
No,
teachers as
no,
groomers.
but Mothers for Liberty certainly has.
Moms for Liberty?
Sorry,
No,
Moms for Liberty.
no, they haven't. Moms for Liberty is a big interest on the show. I've heard it brought up in lots of shows. I'd encourage you to have them on, and they'd be happy to talk about their positions on things. I'm a candidate for school board, so I'd rather talk about my campaign.
Yeah, we are talking to Moms for Liberty and hoping to have them on sometime soon. So
Good,
that
good.
should happen. We've got a call from Kathy in Mandarin. Good morning, Kathy. Go ahead. Kathy, you want to turn down your radio and go ahead, Kathy? I'm going to put you on hold, Kathy. I've got a call from Brent in Mandarin. Good morning, Brent. Go ahead.
Yes, my child was a student of Becky's, and she was a really great teacher. My child was very happy when she saw her picture on those big signs. But anyway, I would like to know what you want to do to retain good teachers, because they seem to be leaving. Well, actually, right now they're getting fired. What is your plan to retain those those teachers?
Thanks, Brent.
Thank you. And just to be clear, I haven't been a teacher, but I have been a substitute teacher, so perhaps that caller is referring to that. I think we can retain teachers by offering them the support they need. I've done focus groups with teachers. They feel oftentimes that the district purchases new products and programs and is continually trying new things. We need to stick with what works, especially when it comes to literacy, the science of reading approach. But we need to listen to the teachers on the front line and consider their perspectives when the school board's passing policy. But again, I think focusing on the culture and the climate and addressing the concerns that they've indicated in the safety survey, for example, that the Duval Teachers Union recently did. They surveyed 800 teachers to ask about safety and security, and I think their responses need to be taken seriously, and we need to address those.
One of the things that you have on kind of your resume is work on developing curriculum.
Mhm.
What kind of curriculum do you develop?
Yeah, a workforce development curriculum. So not in academia,
Okay.
but I have worked in a variety of industries in the human resources profession. And so I've been responsible for developing curriculum, both to develop leadership and supervisory skills at higher levels in organizations. But I've also been a part of developing basic frontline workforce skills, oftentimes that are lacking from high school graduates that employers would have thought they would have mastered or received in high school. So we've had to do some of that type of remedial education and training in the workforce, but I've done a little bit of all of that and everything in between.
Among the choices and decisions that will be made by the next school board has to do with, budget issues and the possibility of school closures and consolidations. And there are, I think, at least 4 potential school closures or that are on that list of, possible closures that are in District 3, all of them elementary schools. What is your feeling about that plan overall as a cost-saving measure for the district? Do you support consolidating or possibly closing some of these schools?
Well, I think some of the consolidations have to happen. That was a part of the very original master facilities plan from years ago. There's just an acknowledgement that we have some schools in certain sections of town with not enough students in them to pay for the operation of that school, meaning general fund dollar. The funding's supposed to follow the students. So we've got money that should be funding schools that have a high number of students going to operate schools that may not have enough students in them. Now, the current plan is getting worked through, and it requires a lot of community input. It's my understanding that the district and the school board are listening carefully to all the stakeholders as they should be doing. But I hope I answered your question.
I think so.
Okay.
I want to ask you about that money following students, because that is one of the big discussions in the state right now.
Mhm.
The reality that, between vouchers and charter schools, that a lot of money that traditionally went to traditional public education is going elsewhere, which is why there is this budget
Yeah.
crisis.
Well, the money's going elsewhere because the students are going elsewhere. So voters overwhelmingly support school choice and the funding following students, not systems. I would like to see our public school system improve in every way that we can so that it is an excellent choice for everyone who has a school nearby that's a neighborhood DCPS school. That would be great. And we can get that funding back if we can attract and retain those families and those students.
But fundamentally, you support the idea of dollars following students, for instance, if they want to go to a private school.
Well, that's the law.
Right. But I mean, is that something that you believe is an
Yes,
appropriate law?
because if the public school can compete, we can win those students back.
I'm going to take a call from Karen in Jacksonville. Good morning, Karen. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. Good morning. My question would be to just elaborate a little more on your work experience and your human resource experience and the fact that you worked at NASA and you worked at University Hospital, and you have so much more experience than I can't even find any experience on your opponent. Tell us more.
Sounds like a supporter.
Thank you. Well, I have not worked for NASA, but I can explain. I currently have a business that is a very small one-man show, human resources consulting, instructional design, leadership development, workshop facilitation. And I was recruited to work for another company that had a contract with NASA. So I have gone down to the Cape and delivered some management and leadership workshops there. So I think that's what she's talking about. But really, I think what has been a part of my experience that I think will be a very valued skill set and perspective on the school board is that I worked in a very contentious union environment, and I helped work with managers and collective bargaining units to hold employees accountable and to follow the rights of all workers and comply with collective bargaining agreements and look at policy and all those things. So I bring that perspective to the board that I think is currently lacking.
A couple of topics I think we always have to touch on, the issue of book removals from classrooms or from libraries, the issue of teaching around the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm. So the book removals, what's your question about it?
Do you support them?
If it's inappropriate, if it's sexually explicit, I mean, that's the law. So
how about books that are recognized classics or Pulitzer Prize?
I don't think they should be removed, period. I never have advocated for that.
So books like Beloved or The Bluest Eye?
No, I haven't. I have not challenged any book like that.
Okay.
The other, what was the other question?
DEI.
What's your question about it? I don't think that should be the focus. I think we should be focused on the basics in public education. We need to have a merit-based system that focuses on literacy for every single employee, literacy, math, civics education. Mm-hmm.
So and I guess the question for DEI is, one of the questions, the law requiring now that, if lessons make someone uncomfortable in a classroom, that they shouldn't be taught. And I think people who support DEI education would say some of the things that need to be taught do make people uncomfortable, including things like the history of slavery.
I don't think the history of slavery should not be taught. I think we need to teach the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. Teach the Holocaust, teach slavery, teach everything, warts and all about American history.
Even if it makes someone feel bad.
Yes.
Okay, good. Got a question from Jerry in Arlington. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yes, Miss Becky, I live in Arlington, and I heard you at one of the forums, and you talked about contracts and policies that the school board, has to review. And I want to know, what value do you bring and what experience do you bring to the school board to review those kind of things? Because we know that our tax dollars have not always been spent wisely on the school board. So can you explain what you can bring to the table to make
Jerry.
that better?
Well, I think we may have already addressed that. Thank you there for the call. I just want to bring a serious effort to provide oversight and scrutiny, to ask questions in school board workshops and school board meetings, to really do my best to vet and review anything that I'm being asked to vote on. And I think, we could do better just by shining a light, increasing transparency on these issues, I think will drive higher performance.
Just briefly to touch on one of the issues that you've spoken to the school board about before was the health survey that used to be done of students. You objected because it included some questions about sexual activity, but now there is no survey. What do you want to try to get a health survey back? It was information used by a lot of agencies. whether they're suicide prevention or drug prevention.
I would be open to that, and I think that the Department of Education was going to offer an alternative. I'm not sure about that particularly, but I feel like I have a memory of that. I don't mind surveys being done, but if they're asking students questions about their sexual history, being sexually abused or raped, parents need to have that information before it's being asked of their children.
What if kids aren't comfortable telling their parents? Is it not important for schools and other agencies to know if kids are having
We do
sexual
not need to
activity?
be asking 10, 11, and 12-year-olds if they started having sex at age 8, 9, or 10. And those were questions in the survey. So no, parents do not want their children being asked those questions.
I mean, it's probably worth saying that 5% of kids before the age of 11 are sexually active.
I don't agree with those questions being asked without parents' knowledge and consent.
All right, we're going to have to wrap it. Thank you so much for being here, Becky Nathanson. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
Congaree & Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com. Mayo Clinic, seeing the unseeable by using advanced imaging technology to improve accuracy in diagnoses and treatments. More at mayoclinic.org/Florida.
Several countries are trying to limit tourism, and some say the solution to the world's growing wanderlust is for tourists to travel better.
I really want people to just wake up to the stakes of what they're doing when they travel, when they go on vacation, and realize that you are a member of a vast and potent social force.
I'm Deborah Becker. How to achieve the right kind of tourism. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
New Orleans is a city prone to flooding, but its massive drain system is clogged. The city is struggling to clear catch basins along its roads designed to catch runoff. And that's not the only problem on the Big Easy's roads. Investigating the infrastructure of New Orleans, where the city is behind on filling potholes, clearing storm drains, and changing traffic lights. That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Part of an endeavor by my two guests, Cameron Kirkland. He's the founder of Underground Markets Jacks. Hey, Cameron.
Hi, how are you?
Great. And resin artist Rosa Money. Hey, Rosa.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
So, Cameron, your background is in the arts, but in voice. How did you get into vintage goods and antiques?
Oh, so I've always, even when I first moved to Jacksonville, I've always been a flea market person. And so that's actually kind of how I got into these markets. I started out as a vendor selling antiques and vintage, and I moved into 2 antique malls where I rent space and sold. And
that draws people.
So we have multiple vendors. I have over 700 vendor applications. And that was another reason, I was a vendor having a hard time getting into markets. And so there was an opportunity, there needed to be more opportunity for people to sell what they make and what they create. And so in this market, I curate it, in a very specific way. We have wellness people who make their own soaps, their own lotions. We have farmers who grow their own produce and make their own sauces, their own hot sauces. We have artists like Rosa here who makes resin art. We have painters, jewelry makers, candle makers, candle pourers. So we have a little bit of everything.
So what is the frequency of these pop-ups? Are they every month?
So we manage our growth slowly. But our first market was in Riverside. We've since moved it to Springfield. It's twice a month in Springfield, every other Saturday. Our next one is on August 10th from 4 to 9 at PHX Jacks. I have 2 other monthly markets, one on Park Street next to the antique malls, across from European Street Cafe in Riverside. That's our After Dark Sip and Shop. It's every 3rd Thursday. And then we have the 5 Points Market Sunday in the heart of 5 Points, Birdie's, Root Down, Rain Dogs. That's every 3rd Sunday from 1 to 6.
And so when you say like the one in 5 Points, those markets are actually inside those bars?
They're indoors, yes. And that was, when summer hit, I had to get creative because it was really hot outside. And so all of our markets are indoors except for the Park Street one. That's at night.
So it is a sip and shop there too?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Rosa, you're a photographer, but you also have gotten very into resin art. So explain a little bit about your path creatively.
Sure. So my background was in film and photography. And really, where that passion came from, I'm a third generation filmmaker and photographer.
Huh.
And so I really am passionate about encapsulating moments, just capturing them in a special way. And so resin was kind of like a natural progression for that.
And so describe for people what kind of art you make. We have some that's behind you, and we'll get a shot of that for people who are watching our live stream, but describe what it looks like.
So they're wall plaques. My newest collection is called Sweet Baby Lips. And so it's kind of like a satire, but also celebration of modern women. So I create these little mini verses where I use miniatures and polymer clay stuff that I make, and everything's resin cast. So they're kind of feature like the modern women as they are, with like their little hobbies or crystals, or I made one for like bread babes. So if somebody's on a bread journey, so they're kind of like
Bread journey. I've never quite heard it described like that before.
yeah, for your anxiety, you just go on a
Sure.
bread journey.
Post-COVID sourdough evolution.
Exactly. And then I also made one that's behind me, and so that's another collection, and that's called the Faceless 3. And so it deals kind of with emotions that are confusing, and that's why it's called the Faceless 3. Here you can see like a heart on top of a butterfly, and this one is more dedicated to like dealing with when you're feeling like you're in love, you have those butterflies, but you're also very guarded. You maybe have been hurt a lot. So that's why you have the jungle leaves, because love is a dangerous game and it's a jungle. You have your love potions and crystals to keep you safe, but you also have the exposed heart and the butterfly. So, you're ready to go.
And you also make jewelry, though.
Yes, I do. Yes. And I use a lot of humanely sourced snake shed, snail shells. I have a whole collection of made with flowers that I just locally source.
Did you say snake shed?
Yes, snake
Interesting.
shed. So it's not the actual skin. The snakes are still well and alive. And I actually buy it from a guy in Wisconsin. So he breeds the snakes for pets and then sends me the shed.
That's wild. So Cameron, we just have a little bit of time left, but tell us how people can get involved and where they can find information about the underground markets.
So you can find all of our markets on our website, theundergroundmarkets.com. We're also on Instagram, Underground Market Jacks, and we're on Facebook and the Underground Jacks. I encourage you all to come. Rosa, we have many vendors like Rosa, artists, who this really creates a space for them to sell their products, but it also helps them create awareness for their brand and, their creativity.
Well, lots of creativity for sure. Rosa Money, Cameron Kirkland, thanks so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
And that's our program. We welcome your feedback and suggestions. You can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight, or you can find our entire program archive at WJCT.org. You can also subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss another episode. Our executive producer is David Luckin. Our show is produced by Stacey Bennett and directed by Brady Coram. Our associate producer is Jamie Valet. Join us tomorrow when our Week in Review panel discusses a proposed hate crime bill named after a mother of 10 murdered in Jacksonville's race.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. Sing Out Loud Festival presents the Live Wildly Showcase with Eric Church, Noah Kahn, Ryan Bingham, Nora Jones, and more. September 21st and 22nd in downtown St. Augustine. More information at singoutloudfestival.com.